If you head about 30 minutes outside Austin, Texas, along Farm to Market Road 973, you'll come across a monument to a shattered American commitment. It's a vast, empty expanse of unfinished steel frameworks, motionless bulldozers, and sun-scorched parking lots standing silent. They named it the Taylor Fab. It covers more than 2,200 acres. It was planned to be as large as 11 football fields. It was meant to stand as the ultimate symbol of American manufacturing strength, a stronghold of semiconductor production that would lock in U.S. technological supremacy for the coming half-century. But this morning, the cranes went still. The delivery trucks halted. The entrance gates were locked with chains. In a decision that has left Wall Street stunned, rattled the Pentagon, and sent the White House into damage control mode, Samsung Electronics has formally canceled its Texas expansion. They are dismantling operations. They are abandoning the largest single foreign direct investment Texas has ever received. And they are relocating $25 billion in committed capital. But they aren't returning it to South Korea. They aren't redirecting it to Europe or Japan. They are moving it directly across the northern border. During a joint press conference in Toronto that registered like a geopolitical tremor, Samsung executives stood side by side with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. They didn't merely reveal a fresh collaboration. They didn't simply ink a preliminary agreement. They declared Canada the new exclusive North American center for cutting-edge logic chips. Donald Trump attempted to dominate the worldwide semiconductor supply through intimidation, tariffs, and late-night deadlines. He believed the United States was simply too large to disregard. He assumed South Korea had no realistic option except to follow his orders. But Mark Carney never flinched. He observed the disorder erupting in Washington. He picked up the phone and presented the planet's most vital technology firm with an entirely different proposition. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through precisely how this historic breakdown occurred. I'm going to reveal who lost composure first, why global supply networks are fracturing live, and why this particular devastating blow to the United States will reach into your wallet the next time you shop for a vehicle, a smartphone, or a laptop. This goes far beyond microchips. This concerns the complete reordering of worldwide influence. The American empire is hemorrhaging, and you are witnessing history in motion. To grasp the full impact of this morning's announcement, you must first recognize the scale of the game being played. Semiconductors aren't merely electronic components. They are the petroleum of the 21st century. They form the essential foundation of today's world. Without the advanced logic chips, specifically the 2-nanometer and 4-nanometer nodes the Taylor site was constructed to manufacture, your smartphone becomes useless. The entire artificial intelligence surge comes to a standstill. The data centers powering the internet cease to advance. And most alarming for Washington, the U.S. military's forthcoming missile guidance platforms and F-35 jets become impossible to produce. The United States has been frantic, truly desperate, to repatriate production of these chips onto domestic soil. For years, they have funneled tens of billions into incentives and grants through the CHIPS Act. Samsung's Texas plant served as the cornerstone of that whole plan. It appeared locked in. Ground was broken. The Williamson County economy was surging in expectation of 20,000 incoming jobs. The United States believed they had finally reclaimed their technological core. Then the Trump administration rewrote the playbook. In recent weeks, the White House has applied intense, reckless pressure on South Korea. Under the America First slogan, officials insisted Samsung not only construct the facility in Texas, but also completely break off its worldwide supply chain ties with selected foreign partners. They insisted Samsung give priority to American customers at mandated below-market prices and warned they would reclaim billions in federal CHIPS Act support unless Samsung accepted harsh, one-sided new tariffs. Trump effectively tried to ransom a multi-billion-dollar factory. He figured the sunk costs were far too great for Samsung to abandon. He figured that once concrete was poured, they were stuck. He was treating one of the globe's most advanced, affluent, and influential tech corporations like a neighborhood contractor he could strong arm for a discount. He approached geopolitics like an organized crime extortion scheme. But South Korea refused to yield. They examined the extreme unpredictability pouring out of Washington. They saw the abrupt, erratic policy reversals, the perpetual menace of punitive tariffs, and the sobering understanding that their enormous investment would become a political pawn in every election season. They concluded that conducting business in the United States under this administration meant functioning inside endless, draining uncertainty. Then Ottawa reached out. While the White House issued public ultimatums and vented on social platforms, Mark Carney carried out a discreet, perfectly executed diplomatic play. Carney does not lead through impulse. He leads through structures, partnerships, and a profound grasp of international finance. He understood Samsung wasn't merely chasing subsidies. Any nation can create currency. Samsung sought certainty. They sought a dependable counterpart that wouldn't rewrite a multi-decade arrangement via a 3 a.m. post. Canada provided something the United States could no longer deliver at any cost: total reliability. Carney's team laid out the welcome mat beneath Canada's emerging defense industrial framework. They didn't simply provide tax incentives, they supplied fundamentals. Semiconductor plants consume millions of gallons of ultra-pure water daily to rinse wafers. Canada holds 20% of global freshwater reserves via the Great Lakes. Fabs demand enormous, consistent electricity. Canada proposed seamless connection to the clean, exceptionally stable hydroelectric networks of Quebec and Ontario. Carney delivered harmonized rules. He delivered tariff-free access to the European Union and the Commonwealth. Above all, Carney delivered dignity. He treated South Korea as an equal sovereign ally, not a dependent client state. And it succeeded. The agreement is finalized. The funds are shifting. Texas is forfeiting its technology throne. Ontario is claiming tomorrow. You need to examine the evidence because the figures are staggering. This isn't speculation. This is unfolding today, right now. Consider evidence point 1, the instant economic wound in Texas. Before sunrise today, the fallout in Taylor, Texas was catastrophic. Local builders in Williamson County received immediate cease-work directives. Thousands of construction employees were instructed to gather their equipment and leave. Suppliers, transport firms, and nearby small enterprises that borrowed millions to serve the Samsung project now face imminent insolvency. Billions in anticipated tax income have evaporated. The Texas property market surrounding the site, which had soared on expectations of explosive growth, has seized up entirely. Mortgages will default. Families who relocated to Central Texas for those promised high-tech positions are suddenly left without options. The financial devastation is immediate and falls squarely on the Oval Office. Now consider evidence point 2, currency and market response. Global markets despise disorder, and they issued a harsh, unforgiving judgment on Trump's bargaining approach. As the Toronto press event started, the U.S. dollar plunged against major foreign currencies while the Canadian dollar climbed to multi-year peaks. NASDAQ technology shares are plunging deep into the red. Look at Apple. Look at Nvidia. Look at Microsoft. Their valuations are tumbling because investors now see the American semiconductor pipeline as insecure. The whole foundation of the AI surge depends on a dependable, uninterrupted flow of leading-edge chips. The belief that America could force its way to technological self-reliance has been demolished. Sophisticated capital is heading north, leaving ordinary American shareholders to absorb the losses. Evidence point 3, the classified alarm inside the Pentagon. This is the consequence mainstream outlets are overlooking. Semiconductors are instruments of warfare. The chips Samsung plan to fabricate in Texas are precisely the ones needed for next-generation targeting sensors, drone fleets, and secure combat communications. By forfeiting this plant, Donald Trump didn't merely sacrifice employment. He transferred American national defense to another nation. Yes, Canada is an ally. Yet recent weeks have shown Mark Carney deliberately steering Canada outside the American sphere. The Pentagon now grasps that securing chips for tomorrow's American fighter aircraft means requesting permission from Mark Carney and meeting whatever terms he sets. The U.S. military has become exposed because its commander-in-chief placed a trade dispute ahead of strategic independence. And finally, evidence point 4, the official Seoul-Ottawa Accord. Examine the wording in the South Korean government's formal statement. It is a diplomatic rebuke aimed directly at Washington. The release commends Canada's steadfast dedication to open markets, its consistent regulatory framework, and its regard for global supply chain reliability. That is diplomatic language for, we are departing the United States because the United States is no longer a secure environment for investment. It serves as a public invitation to every other technology firm on the planet to bypass the American market and establish operations in the Silicon North. This leads directly to the heart of why Donald Trump is losing command of the economic story and why his entire perspective is disintegrating in real time. His whole approach rests on an antiquated, outdated conception of international power. He sees global commerce as a zero-sum contest of supremacy and capitulation. He intensifies with warnings. He levies tariffs and shouts on television, expecting the other party will eventually surrender because America is simply too mighty and too wealthy to defy. He behaves like a property owner convinced he can mistreat renters because they have no alternative residence. But the world has evolved. When you repeatedly weaponize your economy and repeatedly menace your partners, those partners begin constructing new communities. Trump menaced South Korea with tariffs and subsidy reversals. He believed that would compel greater investment, deeper deference, clearer allegiance. Instead, it sparked a comprehensive risk evaluation in Seoul. Samsung's board, among the sharpest financial strategists alive, analyzed the escalating expenses, political meddling, and unstable Washington climate, then calculated that the United States was mathematically no longer a secure base for a multi-decade $25 billion commitment. His pressure backfired completely. He gripped too tightly, the structure shattered, and the reward escaped his grasp. He created an opening, and Mark Carney walked straight in with composure. This is precisely why Carney's method is radically different and why it is presently dismantling the America First framework on the global stage. Carney functions with the disciplined, analytical clarity of a former central banker. He never battles the way Trump battles. You will never witness Mark Carney issuing televised threats against an allied country. You will never see him typing all-caps attacks at 2 a.m. Instead, he deploys systems. He assembles coalitions. He recognizes that in today's global economy, capital migrates towards stability the way water runs downhill. Carney has spent the past year carefully positioning Canada not as a competing military giant, but as the essential moderate power. He has forged connections with countries from the United Kingdom to Japan to South Korea that are thoroughly fatigued by American unpredictability. He is presenting them an alternative framework, a venue where agreements are honored, where commerce rests on shared advantage, and where legal certainty does not fluctuate with one unpredictable leader's temperament. By capturing the Samsung commitment, Carney has turned Canada's steadiness into a strategic asset. He didn't merely gain a factory, he captured the storyline. He has demonstrated that you don't require an enormous military or a 300 million person consumer base to claim the future. You only need trustworthiness. You only need to act as the responsible party. Right now, Canada possesses trustworthiness, and the United States has forfeited it. You must recognize the profound historic weight this carries for ordinary citizens. Even if Canada means little to you, even if Taylor, Texas is unfamiliar, even if nanometers sound abstract, this change will reach your daily life in costly, painful ways. The United States has just surrendered control over its own pipeline for the single most vital element of the contemporary economy. Because Samsung is relocating to Canada, the chips American industry depends on will now face border-crossing delays and costs. If Trump persists with his trade conflict and imposes the universal tariffs he has promised on Canadian goods, he will be taxing the very components American firms require to function. Consider Detroit. Today's vehicles contain thousands of semiconductors managing brakes, navigation, engine performance, and battery systems. If Ford and General Motors must pay a 20% tariff to bring in Samsung chips manufactured in Canada, the sticker price of a new pickup will climb by thousands of dollars. The cost of hospital imaging machines will rise. The expense of modernizing the American electrical grid will surge. The laptops children use for classes will cost far more. Inflation, supposedly tamed, will receive a powerful secondary jolt simply because the United States must now import the technology it intended to produce domestically. We will pay extra simply to participate in tomorrow. On a deeper, more fundamental level, this marks a frightening erosion of American authority. For generations, the United States stood as the undisputed destination for global aspiration. If you aim to shape the future, you built in America. The sharpest talent, the largest enterprises, the deepest capital all flowed to the U.S. Today, South Korea looked at the United States and said, "No, thank you. You have become too great a risk." An image captured earlier today perfectly sums up this entire failure. As the story broke, cameras showed the Texas construction site. The enormous steel frame of the fab stood motionless beneath the sky. A solitary security officer methodically locked the main gate. Beside that gate, a weathered, tattered banner waved in the Texas heat, reading, "Building America's Future." On the other half of the broadcast, Mark Carney stood in Toronto, shaking hands with Samsung's CEO inside a crisp, contemporary boardroom framed by the flags of Canada and South Korea. Trump did not bargain. He dictated, and the world simply moved aside, bypassed him, and transferred tomorrow to someone else. So what comes next? Normally, this is when leadership intervenes to steady markets, resume quiet talks, and arrange a dignified compromise that halts the damage. But we know this administration does not operate that way. Three paths are unfolding right now, and none conclude favorably for the American public. Scenario A is the tariff collapse loop. This appears the most probable route. Trump reacts with fury. He interprets this as a direct personal attack on his deal-making ability. He declares swift retaliatory steps against South Korea, possibly huge vehicle tariffs on Hyundai and Kia. He targets Canada, vowing to dismantle cross-border trade pacts and close the frontier. But each threat will merely reinforce Samsung's choice to depart. It will demonstrate to every other nation that the U.S. has grown too aggressive and too punitive for foreign capital. Retaliatory duties will follow, hammering American agriculture and industry. The economy will stall. Scenario B is the technology executive rebellion. The U.S. corporate community turns decisively against the White House. We mean the heads of Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon recognizing their entire product timelines have been erased. They enter the Oval Office and insist the erratic trade approach end. They compel the administration to retract its warnings and plead with Samsung to reconsider, but the moment may have passed. Foundations are already being laid in Ontario. Supply agreements are already executed. Confidence is irreparably damaged. Once the global market labels you unreliable, trust cannot be restored. Scenario C is the fortress Commonwealth. Canada, the United Kingdom, South Korea, and Japan hasten their alignment, forming a sealed technological bloc that permanently excludes the United States. They pool innovation, they conduct frictionless trade, and they leave the U.S. as an isolated, resentful consumer giant that generates little except debt and political turbulence. The U.S. falls behind in the AI contest, and within 10 years, we purchase our most sophisticated technology from Toronto and London, paying whatever rate they choose. We are navigating perilous, unmapped territory. The international system is being redrawn live, and the United States is being erased from the central storyline. Mark Carney has just delivered a textbook demonstration of strategic mastery. He converted American coercion into Canadian advantage. He safeguarded his nation's interests by providing refuge to those harmed by Trump's trade conflict, and in doing so, locked in Canada's economic position for the remainder of the century. Do you believe Mark Carney is safeguarding the global supply network, or is he intentionally provoking Donald Trump to overreach and further isolate America? Share your view below. I want to hear your thoughts on this enormous transition. The period of American technological supremacy may have concluded today. not through conflict, but through an agreement. If you want the unfiltered account, if you want the next developments before conventional outlets even understand the event, hit subscribe. Stay alert. The world is changing, and we are following every move.